Welcome to the Therapist Book Club, where two therapists dive into their favorite books and the powerful mental health themes they uncover.
Whether you're here for literary inspiration, therapeutic tools, or just some lighthearted conversation, you've found the right place.
So get cozy and let's dive into the pages together. Hello, we're coming here to talk about the book Spare by Prince Harry. Um, I know he has a last name.
Does he?
Sussex? Is that his last name now?
I don't know.
No, I think they take on the last name like uh Kate Middleton is Windsor.
He's used the last names Wales and Sussex.
Yeah, it's whatever they're in charge of.
That is very interesting. I'd
I
never
know.
considered this, that he has a last name.
There's like, and then there's like a Mountbatten. Anyway, apparently, when you're that,
You don't need a last name. He's like Cher.
yes. uh, anyways,
I
so we
just have to say, when you first suggested this book, I was like, I'm not reading a memoir about Prince Harry. That sounds so stupid.
I thought so too. I really was like, here's why I chose this book. I like to read, I like to listen to books when I'm falling asleep. And I was like, I particularly like British accents. There are no books in your audible library. My Alexa.
Oh,
Alexa,
who's
stop. Anyway, and I was like, hey, this one should sound good. And I don't care because I'm going to be falling asleep. I ended up like, I would be drawn in listening.
fake?
Like, it actually is surprising how engaging the stories are. I loved the stories of like when he was in the military, when he was younger, like going to Australia. And
I enjoyed this book too. After
yes,
after I started it, I was like, I was drawn into just like the unbelievable existence that this man has had and the circumstances of his life. And I, as a therapist, I'm like, I love people's stories. Tell me all of your stories. I want to hear all of it. So that's why I do love memoirs too. I just am typically not drawn to like famous people's memoirs because I feel like it's just kind of BS and they're just saying what they want to say. I have some
yeah.
opinions, but I really enjoyed the, especially the message he was trying to get across in this book. It was not just a let me tell you my life story, that he really had I think a political position that he was
Mhm.
trying to put across in this book.
And I think so. Prince Harry has always been the sacrificial lamb, right? He's the spare.
There.
And so I think he's the only one that could write this book. And
Yeah.
people would take it like I'm thinking, like Princess Fergie.
Mm.
She has done, she's talked about royal life, but no one takes her seriously, and I think for Harry, like I think I believe most of his stuff. I think he is politically motivated to get his story out as well.
Mhm.
um
I
I,
think he also reached a point where he didn't have much else to lose
well,
by
yeah, it's like he
doing
wasn't getting to tell his story.
yeah.
Everybody was telling it for them. And yeah, and to me, I also think that where his family might disagree, that's okay. Like in a family, we may disagree on how things went down because we all experience them differently. And to me, I'm like, I think Harry deviates from the family on how things went down, and this is his perception based on his life experience, and that's okay. Um, but I thought there was a few really big themes. I thought there was really fun stories, but there was some really big themes in here. There's a lot of trauma,
Yeah.
a lot of man, like the loss of his mother was pervasive through this story. And not only that, but like I'm old enough to remember them walking behind in a huge procession their mom's casket.
Mhm.
And I don't know. And they didn't cry. You know what I'm saying? I'm like the
Well,
pressures that
I
they
mean, kind of
put.
in connection to one of our last episodes about helping support kids through grief. and
Mhm.
loss and death of a parent or a loved one, he did not get any support in this. And he was very confused about what
Yeah,
happened to his mother. And for a long time, he had a lot of like almost like um I'm missing the words, but he thought maybe she was still alive for a long time.
yeah. I
And
think
I
he
think
had
part of it was
hope.
due to him not getting the support he needed to grieve.
Well, and I think that's where you see his relationship with his grandma.
Yeah.
Like he talks about the experience with it, what kind of father he had from his dad. And I think his dad was hands off.
Yeah,
But
definitely.
I have a feeling that's how his dad was raised. Not to down on the queen, but like she was busy, and so nannies probably took care of the kids as much as she did. And so Prince Charles probably this is or King Charles now is that's probably how he witnessed parenting as well. And I think because Princess Diana was so hands on, they I don't know. Sometimes there are marriages like that, right? That like very divided roles in the family. I think they divided those roles that Prince Charles was meant to be the prince and he was meant to do the public stuff, and Diana would stay home and care for the children. So when they lost Diana,
Yeah.
their
He got lost.
nurturer, yeah, they lost that connection. And in the videos, if you look up the videos of that, there's a point where Harry gets a little too close to the horses, I mean, to
Mhm.
the back of the carriage, and the queen hurries up and grabs him to pull him back. And there's tons of videos of him making the queen laugh, and I have a feeling that Queen Elizabeth, and I think he alludes to this. Like, I think, I think that Prince William, it was easier for him to fall in line. I'm like, I have a brother and I have me. And I'm the Prince Harry of the family, and my brother's the Prince William. And I
Mm.
have big emotions and I share my emotions and I wear them on my sleeve. You can see them. I don't hide them. I could not if I tried. My brother is so good at pulling it together, holding it together, being socially acceptable, like um kind of brushing things off. And I'm like, I bet that that is what Prince William is like. He was maybe nurtured that way, but also that's probably more aligned to his personality. Maybe it's the redheads.
Yeah. You guys are fiery.
Maybe that's the common denominator, but I don't know.
I think for Harry is it falls under like this like expectation at birth of what role he plays in the
Yeah.
family.
He probably had more freedom than Prince William when you think about it, right?
Yes.
Because uh,
Yes.
Prince
Much less
Charles,
expectation.
yeah. Charles used that. He when Harry was born, he is the one that coined that phrase, an
Mhm.
heir to spare.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, he probably nurtured, especially once Diana had passed away, he probably nurtured them differently.
I think in the book they even made reference to somebody like flat out saying that he was conceived in order to be like a donor to William if he ever needed like a body like
Mm,
a kidney or something. Like now that they had two sons, now they had a backup. Like
yeah,
this
yeah.
was common talk. Like maybe in jest, maybe in like joking, but
No,
I
I
can't
bet not.
realize it's all.
I bet this was something that they wouldn't say in front of Harry.
I think they would.
Yeah, well, I
It's
don't
like,
know.
okay, so growing up, my sister was always messy. And we called her Messy Jessie. And
Sorry,
she was
Jesse.
Sorry, Jessie, messy Jessie. And she really internalized that to be like, I'm the messy one, I'm the slob, whatever. But we said it in jest. Like it wasn't like we were trying to be mean to her. It was just like, it's kind of a funny joke. But I wonder if that's the way it seemed to me that Harry took it on. It's like, this was
Yeah,
just the way I was talked about. And it wasn't necessarily because they hated me. It was just, this was my role for them.
yeah. But I think when you look at his life, right, and he did not, he kind of touched on certain things. Because of my age, I remember these things hitting the tabloid. I remember when he wore Nazi Germany costume out. to a party. He kind of brushed through that a little
Don't
bit, that
remember
he got
that.
set up on that and somebody thought it would be funny. And anyway, he had multiple stints in rehab for marijuana use. And to me, so he kind of, I think he brushed over those portions of it. Maybe it doesn't feel that big to him. And also he's had a big life to kind of
Summarize in a book.
summarize. Yeah. And he got sent away a lot, like in
Okay, but
his,
his substance, okay, the substance abuse thing was a really interesting component. So it's from the way I'm remembering the story going, the first time he was being accused by the tabloids that he was using some drugs or doing some illicit things,
Mhm.
he was adamant that he didn't do those things at the in the very first instance. And then when the story was published anyways, or the family covered up for him, I can't remember how it all went down. That's when he started engaging in the behavior. So it was like, you claimed that this is who I am, so let me show you. I'll do
Yeah.
it anyways. If
Like,
you're going to tell this story, then let me make it true at least.
yeah. But there, anyway, so it's like all of that though, I think like you can just kind of see Harry was younger when he lost his parent.
Mhm.
I think that makes a difference.
And
Uh,
how you process. Yeah.
yeah. I have a feeling that like I have two children, uh, and well, we just went to Disneyland, and you know what? There's a divide. There is a unintentional divide, but it's always divided the same way, and it's unspoken. You know what I'm saying? Like my if I died, my son would take it harder than my daughter. That is not because I love them differently or they love, you know what I'm saying? He and I, yeah. So I'm like, I wonder if that's it. If like William has maybe been closer to his dad because his dad's been, nurturing him and helping him follow in his footsteps, you know?
Well, and I wonder too if there's like if Harry saw himself in Princess Diana, like she was kind of like the one who was going outside of the box of what was expected of her. And that's kind of how
Yeah.
he is. And like Prince William and King, what's his name? King what? King
Charles.
Charles, they are more in like inside the box and they do what's told of them and they kind of follow the rules and they thrive
Yeah.
on the rules. And so maybe that's why it was such like a bigger loss for Harry because he saw himself in his.
I think you're right. I know he does talk about his mom was definitely an out of the box royal. And I think that's why the people loved her. And I
But
think that's
they
why
loved her out of the boxness, but not his.
that is true. But it is all how it was framed, right? Like in in the relationship, it was framed that Diana was the victim of that relationship. So we had empathy. The way that Harry and Meghan are perceived now, they're not perceived as the victim of the relationship. They're perceived as like the villains, right? So we don't give them empathy. We don't see them trying to live outside the box. We see them as privileged people who are like throwing their privilege in people's faces or taking it for granted. You know what I'm saying? Like, and I don't know. I some of it too. Anyway, I won't get too far. I thought their love story was beautiful. To be fair, I felt for Harry. I think he tried to date normal women. Like what was her name?
I can't remember their names.
Krissa, the one that anyway they say in like she
When he met.
yeah, she was like the soulmate,
Yeah.
but she couldn't handle the scrutiny of the public. She couldn't handle paparazzi and they or was it Chelsea? Anyway, he had two girls.
I can't remember. There was the one I'm thinking of is the one he met in Africa.
Yeah, I want to say she was anyway, yeah, the one that she met, I thought it was Krista or something. Anyway, and they're like kind of all friendly still, it seems like. But so we're all pissed off at Megan, but I'm like, she's the only one that could handle this life, Like, I think Kate, Princess Catherine, this was, she was young going into it. Um, she was around. Prince William at college. You know what I'm saying? Like she was raised in London. Like, unfortunately, Cressida. Is that her name? Oh, now I can't. I'm like, all these names are anyway, I can't remember. But yeah, the African one, and he just loves
Healthy.
that was the one. Okay, because there was two of them that he dated between like two big relationships, and they all ended because of paparazzi. So then he finds an American actress, and England hates him for it. Like, what do you want from, like, who is he gonna find? Like, we don't marry our cousins anymore in the royal family.
Yeah, and I, there were some allusion, some not allusion, alluding to the fact, and maybe it wasn't in the book. Oh yeah, maybe it was in the book about Megan's race being
Mhm.
a big component of their anger at his connecting to her and wanting to marry her and be with her. Um,
To me, I'm like with England, right? Like, I don't think the whole country of England is racist.
but is the crown who's trying to preserve a line of heritage.
I mean, that's definitely what's implied in this story, or not story, in this book. He never comes out in names. He definitely does not paint Camilla in a nice light. And I'm
Mhm.
like, would you?
Yeah.
If your dad was treating your mom in that way and publicly humiliating her by carrying on with this other woman, and then your mom dies in the tragic way that Princess Diana did, and you love your mom and you miss your mom, and then he marries the woman, and now suddenly this woman is your stepmom.
And the crown is all fine with it.
Well, I don't think they were like Queen Elizabeth. Have you ever read watched The Crown? It kind of shows I thought it does a really good job of, so she blocked the marriage of her sister, and
Mm.
because she was Queen Elizabeth, like what, her early 30s or something like that. And or maybe it was her dad died in his early, anyway, she was pretty young. And so for her sister to get married, she had to get approval from Queen Elizabeth. Queen Elizabeth didn't like this person, and she blocked it. And then she watched her sister fall apart and date these people who were not like abusive to her, and da 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 da. And I have a feeling that Queen Elizabeth in the end, like, Prince Philip was super against, Queen Elizabeth's husband was against Camilla when Prince Charles was dating her originally before marrying Diana. And I have a feeling Queen Elizabeth was like, listen, you're my son. I love you. I truly believe Queen Elizabeth loved her children. And you clearly want to be with this person. I'm going to find a way I'm going to say yes to that. But because I am like the head of the church, I just can't be there.
Mm.
And so I think they weren't necessarily okay with it, because it took a long time after Diana died that they approved it. But I think Queen Elizabeth was like, you know what? I love you. You clearly love this woman, which I think is the tragic part of it in the first place. Prince Charles should have been allowed to marry Camilla in the first place. That, I know that would have changed so much of the life. He can't go back and change that. He clearly loved her, you know, and still to this day loves her. They are like soulmate material. So in some ways, I feel bad for Prince Charles also, that he was not allowed to make choices for himself. If he wasn't a prince, he would have just married Camilla, you know?
I feel like the point that Harry makes in that whole story is like he felt like that got like a stamp of approval and then like they got to go on and be happily ever after, and yet he technically got the stamp of approval for Megan, but then it like snowballed into like pure chaos, and maybe it was all because of the tabloids and the paparazzi,
Yeah.
and then the crown not having the balls to be like knock it off. and stop harming
Yeah.
my family.
Yeah, to step in for them.
And there wasn't that same tabloid drama maybe with Charles and Camilla, but he was trying to make the point like, why could they have their happily ever after and I can't?
And be protected.
Yes, and be
That was,
protected.
I
Yeah.
think that was the bottom line of this is why wasn't I protected the same way? And so I do think the political, like, maybe meaning of this book is that,
Mhm.
like, the same way that they protect Prince William and Princess Catherine, and the same way they protect Prince Charles, like, why wasn't I protected in that way? Why was I left out there? I think this book was so Prince Harry has been a proponent for EMDR. He talks about he participated in EMDR to kind of help resolve trauma and stuff like that. And I thought this was such a good way to discuss. Like, I can see that, like, in therapy, we talk about the golden thread.
Mhm.
I could see the golden thread of trauma through his life and how that could connect to so many events, and how doing like EMDR, doing therapy can help resolve. I think that's why he was so protective of Megan. Also, like, he was watching the stuff with his mom play out with Megan. Like, why wasn't Princess Diana protected? Why isn't Meghan Markle protected? You know, he's seeing it like, to me, I think it was like a almost a dissociative thing of like a fully triggered that like IFS part of him, that child that witnessed losing his mom. That's what would come online with his children. And I think, first of all, I'm like, good for him for saying, like, I wouldn't say their life has been easy leaving England.
Yeah.
And good for them for doing, like, that's what he needed. I think that's what he was saying. And I don't think people in his family understand this is like a trauma thing for me. And so I need you guys to have my back on this. I watched my mom die in a
Yeah.
chase with paparazzi. I watched her be hounded by this, and I watched her being aired out in, you know what I'm saying? Like, he watched all of that, and now he's watching it again. And through the eyes of his children and himself, as a child watching all of that.
With the paparazzi, the thing that was interesting to me the most of the it was this overarching like maybe well-founded or for a good reason, but paranoia and fear of the paparazzi. And it's
Absolutely.
speaking to what you're saying. It's like he watched this all unfold with his mother, and now it's replicated in his adult family relationships.
Yep,
And and maybe there should be true fear of them because they do some wild stuff. But also could that paranoia and that over responsibility that he's putting on the paparazzi as a whole be a trauma response? And maybe there are some ways to like um lessen the fear response when the paparazzi are around. I don't know, but
for sure. I
there
would
was
I would say,
lots.
yeah, I would say for sure there's a big trauma response around the paparazzi, for sure. He spent so much of his time like running away from it, being away from it. And how could it not?
But I think to the point of all the other royals, like they didn't seem to have as much of a response to the paparazzi. Like it seemed like their response to him being so upset is like just ignore them, or like
Well, yeah. And I think, wouldn't you say in the book it seems like more people had more control over their standing in the media. There was a lot of games being played with the media, it seemed like.
lots of negotiations about what we'll share and what we won't share and how we're going to say it. And
When things will be released, what things will be released, like who we're going to pay off so they don't release, and who we're going to allow to release, right? Like, and
well,
I
and
get
also that's going to influence his like core beliefs of himself. If he perceives himself as the only person being attacked by the paparazzi and everybody else is being protected, what does that do to how you see yourself in the context of your own family?
And I think that's probably true. I think I think there was probably discussion of like, well, this is like the future king of England, Prince William.
Let
Like,
this get
we
out.
can't allow this stuff to go out, but we can't shoot down every story. So let's give them this story.
Get them off their backs.
Hmm. And so, yeah, I have a feeling that Prince Harry was sacrificial at time.
Mhm.
And that sucks, right? And so I did feel like some people reading this story is going to be like, but he's a prince. Like they're going to see the privilege that he had. And there is privilege in this book for sure. And some of the problems that he faces is due to the socioeconomic status, popularity status. It's due to his privilege. But Prince Harry is a human.
You know what caught me off guard a bit with this idea of privilege is like how penny pinching the family was around like the finances that he was allotted. Like he had to shop in like Marshalls or Ross or something, and like he had like a rundown apartment that hadn't had repairs in a long time, or like it just seemed like we're being royals. Like I was caught off guard by the way he was describing his circumstances.
And I think that's the criticism, right? Is like, so what's wrong with shopping at Marshalls? Like
Yeah.
the rest of us shop at Marshalls.
Nothing's wrong with it. It just caught me off guard because in my mind, when I think of
Yeah.
royals, it's like they have everything. They have unlimited funds. They can spend as much money as they want on anything they want. And like money is not an option, or as money is not a barrier to anything. But he's saying actually like money was really like I had to think about money quite a lot.
I think, and what I think a point he was making too is it depends on how high
Like,
up you are.
yeah, that too.
Like Princess Catherine is not shopping at Marshall. When she go, I don't know what she wears at home, but when she goes out to public events, she's gonna have the best designer. Like it helps the royal family when she's photographed looking beautiful, and there's, you know what I'm saying? Like, and so yeah, I think that's what some of the criticism of this book that I had read was just that, like, and that's his privilege, right? Like, oh, we're complaining about Marshalls. Like, I can't even afford Marshalls. I shop at Walmart, like, and but I don't think that's the point he was making. I think he was making um like this is a thing I felt bad for him that they left the royal family, and the royal family took security away from them. And
Yep.
I'm like, no, but that's unsafe. Like that's
But that speaks back to their view of the paparazzi isn't a big deal. Why are you so stressed about the paparazzi?
and to me, I'm like, oh, it's not even just the paparazzi. Like, it's just unsafe for a prince to just be, you know what I'm saying? Prince Harry did not choose to be born as Prince Harry. Like he just happens to be the sperm and the egg that connected.
It was a game of chicken
Hmm.
of them saying, if you leave, we're going to take this away. And they didn't think he would leave.
I think that's something really big. I think that's really big that Harry's like, no, we're still like that's how big this is to me,
Mhm.
is we're still leaving. And so now they're mad that, like, the only commodity that Prince Harry and Meghan Markle have is their story.
Yeah.
So now you're mad at them. You don't want to help them get any support. Like you want to take away all their finances from them and security, but
Yeah.
also you can't use your commodities that you have to support yourself. And I think that's, Prince Harry and Meghan Markle had to do that.
Yeah. Their story of leaving and coming to the US and like the paparazzi found them within like 48 hours or something. That was wild to me.
I think that, and then yeah, could you imagine like the scrutiny? I was thinking of like how that like fog of having like after you've had your first child and you're
Mhm.
trying to be a parent for the first time. And like I can remember they were posting pictures of Meghan Markle and like criticizing how she was holding her child. I'm sorry. I don't think I knew what I like. My husband and I I am not joking. We went to like our baby basics class and we were like, oh, we have to have a pediatrician before we have a baby. Like you're stupid when you are
Oh,
having your first baby,
interesting.
And so I'm like, I don't know. I mean, I can see where they're coming from. I also see that, like, I think he could acknowledge the privilege that he had a little teeny more. I do think he could. I think it's so naturalized to him, he may not recognize the privilege. Like when he's talking about how he had to watch his money,
Yeah.
because also it's taxpayer money.
Yeah.
So I think taxpayers are like, yeah, you should. You should be watching our money. Maybe he could acknowledge
I don't
that
know
a
how
little
all
bit.
their money works. To me, in my mind, it's like
No,
the
they're taxed, and that's what helps. That's some of the that's what goes towards the royal family.
it's not like just generational wealth.
It is some of that and some of the public pays for certain things too.
That should be under scrutiny
Hmm.
because it's taxpayer money. Like we shouldn't
Yeah,
just like you shouldn't be paying for a jet to go across the world for no reason with taxpayer.
right.
But
And
you can,
they
if you have generational wealth, do whatever the F you want with it.
right. So they came under fire when they were, remember he talks about remodeling their house and that, so I think some of it is he was replying back to some of the public
Mhm.
sentiment that they had experienced, and the public was upset with them remodeling and then remodeling again or whatever. And I think because in England a portion of their taxes does go towards the royal family and the upkeep of the royal family, and so I think I just
But
it
there's double standards. I think he was making the point of the double standards. Like some people get to
sure.
live this lavish lifestyle. And I just want you all to know I don't. I'm not living a lavish lifestyle. And why? Like, why is it okay for them and not okay for me?
I think it's okay to acknowledge privilege, though. I think it's okay for him, and I think that's like the people who criticize this book. I think they thought he took too far of like a victim stance, and I think what they meant was because I think he was a victim in some of in some in traumas that I'll never experience in my life. Um, but I don't think that he acknowledged the privilege.
I don't think he feels privileged.
No, I think that's a problem.
But I think his trauma and his attack, his being attacked his whole life and being like put down his whole life makes it unable for him to see the benefits that his position brings to him. Like I think it clouds it. I don't think he could see it for what it is.
Yeah, but it doesn't take that away, right? Like
It
being
still
wealthy
exists. Yeah.
inherently gives you privilege. Being white inherently gives you privilege.
I think he would argue that being a royal has negatively impacted him in every way in his life. I think he would make that argument. I think he makes that argument in his memoir that being born into this family was detrimental to me.
Yeah, and he can say that. That's fine. To me, I'm like, he loved his military service.
Did.
He didn't have to start at the bottom in the same way.
That's true.
He did get some
But
privilege in those areas. He got to go to
I hear
Antarctica, you
I
know.
agree. I agree all of this privilege exists, but it he cannot, I don't therapeutically, I would say he cannot understand that privilege or acknowledge it until he heals from all of the damage that his position has given. Like he can't
Yeah,
see the benefit of his life as a royal until he heals from the damage it did.
I would say the benefit of his privilege, yeah. Because I think maybe there's still not benefit of being a royal.
But his royalty brought privilege.
Hmm. Yeah. And then until that point, until he does that healing, he's going to continue to have that criticism.
Yeah.
And I think that comes back. I mean, privilege is something in our country that we talk about. I hear talked about all the time. But like the color of our skin, how much money we have, the where we were born, or
And yeah.
yeah. And so I think about it. I acknowledge privilege. I don't think it's um like I have a child with special needs.
Yeah.
And luckily, I live in a tax bracket that I can pay for the therapies. I've never had to choose between feeding her or her hearing aids. Like
Yeah.
I never said no to anything because I was able to. That's a privilege. And I'll acknowledge that that's a privilege that not everybody has had. And
Well, the
that,
fact that he could leave the UK and come to the US and have a house to live in.
yeah, have mansions that he could borrow.
Mansions, yeah, mansions.
Yeah. And
Yeah,
so I think that's the tricky thing about privilege is whether privilege isn't like, I feel so blessed that we have special needs, or I feel, you know what I'm saying? It just is, it's lucky for us. I have a leg up that like, it just so happened my education brought some privilege into my life. I fought really hard for that education. I didn't have anybody paying my way. My parents, my mom was disabled and my dad was a caseworker telling me never to do social work. And yet here I am.
yeah.
But the privilege in the end was, like because of my education and because of the career that I was in, that also provided some privilege of I knew the resources that were allotted to me and available to me. Like when I was fighting the school, I had some privilege in that, like, I have friends and connections that I could pull on that other families don't
Right.
because they're not in the same field or they don't have Tiana as as their friend.
In here.
So I think that I think the criticism is the privilege. And you are probably right that he can't call it privilege and it's not, he's not capable.
Okay, but I want to take that back a little bit because maybe he can. Maybe like in a day-to-day conversation, he recognizes all of this, but that was not he needed to make a point with this memoir. That the royal family is not all that you think it is. And here's a backdoor story about what's actually going on from my perspective. And like, so maybe he is able to see all of his privilege, but not in this book in this way.
Yeah. And I think that's the one piece that was missing is like I think he could acknowledge that being a royal, like, and it could have been one sentence. Being a royal brings inherent privilege and here's the other side. Here's like the dark side of that, what that privilege brings.
Yeah. Yeah.
And yeah, there's probably some healing that would have to go to find that neutral stance of my life could be both, that this privilege brought Antarctica to my life, to this military service that I loved so
Green
much.
movie star.
Yeah, brought Megan, like, yeah, how would I ever have connected with Meghan Markle and the
Yeah.
family that he loves because he is close to family, that.
I liked how the book started off with him like being questioned, like, how could you have ever left? Why did you leave? And then he jumps into like, this is why. Let me just tell you why I left. And this whole book, to me, that is the whole purpose of this book is to say, is to justify to the world about why, or to his fam, maybe even just to his family. Like, I left because of this, and here's a whole book about it. And so if he spent any time acknowledging the benefits that the crown or the royal family brought to his life, it would have detracted from his argument for leaving.
I don't know. I think he could say like, so why did you tell a story? This is a story that you're gonna see the privileges of being and like my privilege as a royal, but you're gonna also see the trauma and the negative impacts that that can also bring.
Like I can see why it would have been okay to like I could see why many people stay, and this is why I leave.
Hmm. Yeah, because I just think that's what the criticism is the complaints where you get normal people like us that are like fighting to pay bills and whatnot, and it's hard to be compassionate, for somebody
But I
who,
didn't want to read the book because I'm like, I don't care about some
right.
fake person's sad sob story.
But it's also true that he like this was a really good picture of how trauma can be pervasive throughout your life. Like it all started. I have a feeling it probably still like I can't imagine he doesn't talk much about his parents' marriage. He was so young. I don't know if he has a lot of memory, but that probably wasn't great. And that didn't set him up for like great
Yeah.
just for like when she died.
Well, at some point he talked about like going to visit his mom and there was another man there. And
Mhm.
like she didn't say it was her boyfriend, but
That
yeah.
was the same guy she died with, Paul, or I can't remember his name, but
But also, I mean, you know how in EMDR sometimes if somebody doesn't have like an actual memory of an event, but they remember being told about a story, we can use that as a target. Like even this idea of being known as the spare. And maybe nobody ever called him that to his face, but it was like folklore or it was like the family story. But like, how does that impact
Mhm.
like like your whole life story? Even if you don't have a specific memory of anybody even being mean to you, but like this story of you being the spare can have negative effects on how you perceive yourself.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, I thought this was good. It actually made me want to read the Britney Spears memoir too.
I want to read the Brittany one too.
Because it really made me
I
think,
have another therapist friend who wants to read it so bad. Maybe we
oh,
can
good.
all
Maybe
read
she
it
can join
together.
us sometime. But yeah, I thought it was a good way to see like these events that like I'm old enough to have witnessed. I thought it was a great way to hear uh I love human behavior. I love thinking about why humans do what they do. Reading this book was like that part of like, so when those events were happening, like why was he doing the things that he was doing? And now we're able to hear that side. I had big compassion for him. I also I think as his therapist, I would want him to be able to acknowledge the privilege and even like good stuff, maybe like just find a neutral space with it, like, yeah, being the prince of England, it looks this way and in some ways it is,
Mhm.
and on the flip side, being the spare of England is like
Yeah.
this, and that finding that neutrality, like it is just all part of his story, that all of that is a part of him, and that's okay. All of it is okay. I think he's done great work. I'm not mad at him, and I think they really truly do love each other. um do I think, Megan's always criticized for being so full of herself and like trying to be front and center. Well, she's an actress.
Honestly, I don't follow anything royal, and I had no idea any of these stories. I did not watch anything growing up. You and I are a few years apart in age, but my sister is like royal obsessed, and she knows, like, I was telling her I was reading it, and she was like, oh, yeah, did you get to this part? And did this part? And did this happen? And I was like, I didn't know any of this happened. I didn't know anything about Prince Harry except that he was redheaded and that he married Meghan Markle. And
Mhm.
like I didn't know any of the drama, and so it was kind of, to me it felt like I was reading it from more of a neutral standpoint, and like, or maybe even more on his side, because I didn't see all of the like media on him beforehand or after. Like it felt like I could just hear his point of view
Mhm.
without all the noise, and I could
Yeah.
take it in a little
I
bit.
will say the media stuff that I saw helped me be more on his side as he was telling a story, because in the media, girl, I woke up, I don't know, it was like 3 or 4 in the morning to watch their wedding, Kate
Yeah,
and
my sister
William.
does too.
And but if in the media, there was never stuff in the media about William. Sometimes Kate, it was when they broke up, that was big news. When they got back together, that was big news. When they was like, we are watching for when they got engaged, but that was the news. Versus Harry was not protected, and Harry was always in the media. He was always having stories. There's always pictures of him like in compromising positions. And so why was there so much access to one and not, what I'm saying? Like, so when you hear him talk about that, I'm like, having lived through that time, I'm like, actually, like,
Makes me kind of put my tinfoil hat on a little bit to question everything that the media is telling me. Because if that's the image they portrayed about him, and then he's coming out to say this is actually what happened, it's like,
I
is
mean, yeah,
anything true?
he might be kind of right with that.
Yeah.
Like,
You
maybe,
shouldn't trust anything in the media.
I mean, it, what the media doesn't tell us much about is Prince Harry has won lawsuits against the big media outlets.
Oh yeah, he kind of talks about that in a little bit in the book.
Yeah, there was invasion of privacy, there was falsify. I mean, like, yeah, he was able to win. Um, Princess Catherine did win a case too because they took a picture of her topless and printed.
Lovely.
And so, or maybe they didn't print. either way, anyway, she was on vacation and she was sunbathing. She took her top off and they took a picture
Hmm.
and they won for like an invasion of privacy, which it is.
Yes. But so is everything else that they've been doing.
That I think that's what's Harry's point, right? So is all of it. But I remember there was this story where they went to, I can't remember if this is in the book or just in the media, but they were in New York and they had a car following them and they went to the police station. The police station just like brushed them off.
I don't remember this in the book.
And people were like making fun of them, like, oh my gosh, but there was a lot of fear and paranoia around. He was like, wait, we're
Okay.
driving
Yeah.
and
This is
there's
my mom all
yes,
over
that was
again.
like, and I'm like, how do people not see that, right? Like Prince Harry's already done this, and now that he lost his mom this way, and now he has Meghan and his children in a car with him, being chased by
Because
paparazzi.
of the public's perception of his privilege, though. Like he's a prince. Why is he so scared of these silly little paparazzi? He has
Well,
these
yeah,
bodyguards. I guess maybe not at the
and
time.
I think because in England their money goes towards the royals, I think they believe that they deserve access to them in that way.
It this book blew my mind open about like paparazzi and like the invasion of privacy and like the backdoor deals that would happen between
Yeah.
the royal family and the media and I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's a great one to read. I thought he has a really engaging life story. I
Mhm.
think he has lived life to the fullest. I don't think other royals have been able to do that. I think that's what people get upset about. Um, man, I think he's lovable. He has so many friends.
I loved him courting Megan and like they're like him doing anything possible to get in touch with her when he didn't have access to his phone and like
Yeah.
I don't know. I really liked the book. It made me very endeared to him and I'm still not planning to follow anything royal or celebrity. I
Yeah.
did enjoy it just for the fact, like you mentioned earlier, of like the human story and like somebody being able to tell their story and the perspective that they experienced it. I think that to me, I think is one of the huge benefits of therapy is to be able to tell your story and to have people be able to hear it and just the catharticism, is that a word? Of being able to just say your story and the healing nature of telling your story.
Megan has a show coming out
I heard about that.
because I'm like, I didn't walk away feeling like more positive towards Megan. I don't feel like super negative or positive either way towards her. I will say that I didn't walk away feeling more positive. I walked away feeling more positive towards Prince Harry for sure. But
Okay,
I
I
also am
saw
like,
the show coming out. I saw an ad for her show.
yeah, it's like a lifestyle
Yeah. But
type.
she talks about like, okay, maybe I'm being a little critical. She talks about like showing up as your real and authentic and true self and like this is what I love. And it's like a cooking or I don't, maybe more just all lifestyle
Yeah,
stuff.
gardening and cooking.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But it's so curated
I know.
and
But
beautiful and
she's an
perfect.
actress.
No, but it's not real.
I
It's a
know, and I think that's but what level of authenticity is real for her versus me? I'm allowed to wake up with a mom bun and sweats and make
why
mac and
can't she?
cheese.
They're not even a part of they're not even in the royal family
Well,
anymore.
imagine if she did. Imagine if she did, what kind of critique would be given. And so, yeah, I mean, maybe that's a journey for her of like a Pamela Anderson moment, but she may not be there, and she has a whole different perception and pressure on her than I do.
Yes.
And
This
so yeah,
is why I was hesitant to read anything about royals, like or anything about
yeah,
any famous people, because like I can't relate to their level of like the level of expectation that is placed on them from the public.
sure.
And so it's hard for me to be too like empathetic to their plight.
That's what I mean by Megan. I didn't walk away being more empathetic to her. I thought this was authentic. I thought this was great, great. His he had a ghostwriter.
Oh, yeah.
The writer was amazing. I thought it was engaging and yeah, I mean, for Megan, I don't feel more authentically towards her in any way. I'm wondering about the show if I will, their interviews I didn't think were great when they did with Oprah. I thought
I would read a memoir of her. If she ever were to write a memoir, I would love to read her memoir.
I would love to hear because I'm like, yeah, I think that's what's hard is the I think the English people want her to be authentic.
Yeah.
And I think she's an actress and what's authentic for her right now and the expectations for her are different than like you and me or if he had married well because I'm like they don't give Princess Catherine the same critique although everything is curated for her and when it came down to her cancer treatment she could have been very authentic and brought us in and been an advocate and she cut everyone out and she talks about hair loss now but like do you know what I'm saying like but so Princess Catherine's not getting the same critique that Meghan Markle is and in some ways really but she's the future queen of England
Yeah.
and I would think that and I think that's what Prince Harry's trying to say is and but why doesn't Meghan get the same protection you know like she's still part of the family anyway we could go on this forever I think it's a great book I think we
I
should
will I will say that this was high. I would highly recommend this book to read. Just
even just entertaining
yeah, just to hear somebody's story
hmm
and
it's
to see the effects of, like you said, the PTSD of all that he experienced and how it played out throughout his whole life.
yeah
Really interesting.
we'll have to get on Britney Spears and come back and talk about that one because
Mhm.
I'm curious. I'm curious to hear her. I'm empathetic for Britney. I am compassionate for her. It's she clearly has some mental health concerns that she battles, and she clearly has trauma that has compounded with that. I'm curious to see like her voice in it.
All right, well, follow along for when we do Brittany.
Maybe next month. All
Yeah,
right.
thanks for tuning in. Thanks for joining us on the Therapist Book Club. We hope today's conversation inspired you to explore new stories and perspectives.
Don't forget to follow us for more episodes, share your favorite books with us, and join the conversation on how books and mental health connect on our social media channels.
Until next time, keep reading, keep growing, and remember, your story matters.